So we've blanched our broccoli and it looks great. What we've done next, after blanching it and after putting it in ice water, is we've strained it. And you want to make sure you strain out all the water from this, right? Because if there's any water still on the broccoli or in the bottom of the bowl, when you add it to your hot pan, it's going to cause it to steam, and it's just going to steam the vegetables. We're not going to get that beautiful browning that we're looking for. So after you've strained it, give it a good shake, like in the strainer, and make sure that like as much water is out as possible. So we've got our hot pan here. I'm going to add a little bit of oil. Whoop. We're going to wait for that oil to ripple. Broccoli, for some reason, like absorbs oil. Like those little florets kind of captured. It's got a lot of surface area, even though it doesn't look like it. Every little flower is basically like a sphere, right? And it really sucks in all this oil. So we added just a little bit of extra oil. Like I added like maybe 2 tablespoons of oil. We want it to ripple. The pan's already hot, so I know that the oil is going to heat up really quickly. And you know that the oil is hot because it starts to get this look like, you know, like the little waves at the beach on a calm day, and it's just like, beep, 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 beep. That's when you know your oil is hot. So our oil is rippling. It's become much thinner. You can see it's moving around the pan much more easily. We're going to add our broccoli. So the broccoli is still wet, so you need to be careful because it will splatter. And that's why we have our apron on, because splattering sucks on our clothes. So we're going to put these in, and you can hear them starting to sizzle already because this is a very hot pan. My pan is at a 7 or 8 out of 10 because remember, these vegetables are already half cooked, and we want to cook vegetables on a high heat so that they brown quickly. And the whole reason for parboiling these was to make sure we can brown them really quickly and not worry about how much the inside is cooked, because that's already done. So our whole goal here is only browning. So we've got these guys in our pan. And what we want to do is we want to let them sit, because remember, browning comes from contact with the pan. So if you're moving them around and fussing around, like they're not going to brown because you're just moving them around. But what we're going to do is we're going to let them sit and brown, and then we're going to turn them over so more of them brown. One thing you can do actually is like do this to kind of scatter the oil around. And you can see like it's sucked up all that oil already, right? Broccoli just like sucks up oil. You can add more oil if you want. I try to avoid adding more oil because it's just extra fat and it can make them a little greasy. But if you like really like that, you know, olive oil flavor, or if you want to use butter, like you can absolutely add some more if you want. Although if you're adding butter, I wouldn't add it till the very tail end because this is a really high heat. Butter will burn at this high heat. So if you're adding butter, it's best to cook with olive oil for most of the cooking and add butter at the very tail end. And you will also notice we did not salt these, right? We did blanch them in salted water. That was more of a flavor issue to kind of get the salt penetrated inside of the vegetable. Even though these are a hard vegetable and we could salt them ahead of time to kind of soften them a little quicker, since we've par-cooked them, since we've blanched them, they're already halfway cooked. So we don't want to like hasten their softening, or we don't want them to get soggy basically by adding more salt early. So we're not going to salt these until the very end. So we've got a little bit of browning starting to happen. Since these are wet, like when you add them to the pan, like that steam has to cook off. So what you're seeing here actually is not smoke. This is still the steam. Like we wanted to get rid of most of the water on the broccoli because, you know, the less moisture, the better. But there's really no way around the fact that we've like just taken these broccoli bits out of water and added them to the pan. So there will always be a little bit more water inside the pan than we want. And so we've got to wait for that water to cook off before they actually start to brown. You can hear that sizzling sound. That sizzling sound that you're hearing right now is like the water on the broccoli in the oil. And here's an interesting thing that you'll notice when you're cooking something in a frying pan. And you'll learn this more the more you cook. So if you listen carefully to this sound, it's almost like it's got like a low sound, but it's also got like a whistle. Like if you listen very carefully, you can hear like occasionally, right? And that's like water escaping the vegetables. Now, when these things start to brown and finally burn, the sound of that sizzle is going to change. It's going to go from shh with the occasional whistle to like shh. And that means that all of the water has escaped and actually the surface is beginning to like brown and eventually burn. So the more you cook and the more you saute things, you're going to become familiar with that sound. And like now, like I can put something in a pan and go to the other side of the kitchen and I hear that change in pitch of the sizzling and I come running because I know exactly what's happening. So pay attention to the sounds and the smells in your kitchen. Like you might be surprised like what information they'll give you. Alrighty, we've got our broccoli. This is at a 7. I'm going to turn it up a little bit to an 8 just to hurry it up because we're still cooking off our moisture. These are actually gonna take a little while to cook. Like the chard was really fast, the asparagus was really fast. These are much harder vegetables. So these will still take a few minutes to cook, even though they're par-baked. So we're gonna let these sit for a minute and check on them in a second. Alrighty, these have been cooking for about 3 minutes now, and we're just starting now to get some good browning. You can see here, there's some little brownie bits, and that's a good start, but we definitely want a lot more browning than that. These are looking really good. They're still gonna take a few more minutes, but they're looking really solid. If you notice that the middle is starting to burn a little bit, one thing you can do is just give these like a quick shake like that. What that'll do is kind of like scatter them around. But you can also pour a little bit more oil on the spot. Like if you notice like a browning spot here where there's like stuff stuck to the bottom of the pan. At these high heats, anything stuck to the pan will burn. So if you notice like little like fawn spots developing on the bottom where they're starting to stick, like you can add a little bit more oil and kind of scratch at it to keep it from sticking, because those are gonna be the first spots that burn. Alrighty, they've been cooking for about 4 minutes now. We're finally getting some really good browning here. You can see, got some decent browning there. Got some really good browning right there. That's awesome. This guy's actually ready to be turned. Now, as you're noticing them starting to brown like that, flip them over so you get more spots that have been browned. You'll see like a little bit of blistering, like this guy's got some blistering going on, and that looks perfect. Like you'll see here the florets are starting to blister a little bit. You'll also notice I kind of moved them over to this side of the pan a little bit because there's a hot spot right here. Generally, you want to make sure that you're not crowding your pan, right? You see there's still room between all these things of broccoli. And this is what's keeping them from steaming, right? All that water is escaping. You don't want them to steam, or you want them to steam as little as possible given how much water is in the pan, right? So by keeping them in the pan, but giving them lots of room between each other, you basically keep them from steaming each other. Now you're gonna notice that the color here is still bright green. You never want it to change from this color. This color is really important. Like bright green is like your goal. If it starts to turn gray, if it starts to turn like weird, like pallid colors, take them out, they're done. It means they're a little overcooked. Right, you've got, see this like little burny spot right here? That's what I was talking about. So we're gonna add a little bit more oil, just a little, to kind of like lubricate that area and keep it from burning. Now you can hear, I don't know if you can hear it, but you're actually getting like a little bit of like that higher pitch sound, like, and that means that what's actually happening is these are sticking to the pan and beginning to like brown and are pretty close to burning. So now we want to keep them moving. Once they're that hot and that much of the water has been cooked off, you want to keep them moving a little bit more. It's also important to note that while they were steaming and there was still a lot of water in the pan, like you couldn't really smell them, right? They didn't really smell like anything. They just smelled like raw broccoli. But once they started to brown, once all that water was cooked off and they stopped steaming and actually began like cooking against the pan, suddenly like the smell of cooking broccoli like filled the air. So that's another really good sign that you've hit the point where they're starting to brown. So these are looking pretty much done now. They've got a good even browning on them. Like I can smell the smell like good cooked broccoli. And you can see here that the browning looks really solid. So now we're gonna season them. We're gonna turn off our pan. And now we're gonna add a little bit of salt. Just a little bit. Actually, I'm gonna add a lot of salt because, hello, they're vegetables and they need salt to make them interesting. We're gonna add a little bit of pepper. And we're gonna add a splash of lemon. And this is really gonna wake them up. And then the pan is off. They're still cooking because the pan is hot. Then what we're gonna do is just toss them all together to make sure they're completely and evenly covered with salt, pepper, and lemon. And you can add anything here. I mean, you can add pepper flakes, like dried pepper flakes. You can add a little balsamic vinegar. You can add malt vinegar. You can add anything you want that you think will taste good. But I'm just gonna go real simple with just salt, pepper, and lemon. Alrighty, these guys are done. We're going to plate them. Off we go. Now these are still a beautiful, bright green. Whoop. You'll see they've still got good color. They've got a lot of brown, and that brown is flavor, but they're not gray, they're not weird, they're not limp at all. Like they're actually still pretty crispy. So we're gonna take a fork and fork one. Come here, you. See, that's still super forkable, right? It's like perfectly tender. It's like just tender enough to eat, but it still has a little bit of crunch to it. Actually, I'm gonna get a small one to taste because I don't want to burn my mouth. Come here. Whoop, come back. Oh my God. See, if all vegetables tasted like this, everybody would love their vegetables. They taste fresh. They taste a little smoky. They taste perfectly salted. They have a little brightness from the lemon. They don't taste lemony, but they taste like alive. They taste amazing. These are freaking delicious.